Hi, I'm Bob.
And I'm Sherry.
And this is Mostly Politics with Bob and Sherry.
And today we're interviewing Mr. James Douglas Austin. He is the chairman of the Republican Party for Richland, and also served as the attorney for Trump during the 2020 election. Just full disclosure, Mr. Austin was recruited, and so he was volunteer for Trump in 2020. So, Mr. Austin, tell us a little bit about that experience.
Oh, it was fantastic. I was one of thousands of attorneys in Pennsylvania. They brought a lot of people in from all over the country. I personally was working with somebody from Delaware and I believe Connecticut. And we worked as a team. We went out into the field and looked for voter fraud. We were requested to do that and basically take notes and to set up affidavits evidencing what we had been seeing. And we did that and turned them into the people that were running the lawyers for Trump in Pittsburgh.
So you were basically investigating voter fraud? Is that what it was?
So this would have been after Election Day then. Did you talk to voters? Did you go to where the recounts were happening?
Actually, this happened during the election. We were sent out during the day to go to precincts to look at what was really happening. And we were in the city of Pittsburgh. We were in the suburbs. And this was happening all over Pennsylvania, not just in Pittsburgh and Allegheny County. But from what we had seen, and I'm just not the only one, we had seen a lot of voter irregularities taking place. To the point where, I was talking to a judge of elections at one. She threw away a ballot because it didn't work in the machine. I was watching people on cell phones while they were voting. And these are just the minor things that we had seen. Voter machines were not tabulating all of the votes. And one of the biggest things that I had seen, and this actually happened to me, my name and my wife's name were removed from the voting books in my precinct. We had discovered that happened all over Allegheny County. Don't know why it happened, but it did. And so when I went to go to vote, actually, that's another story. I voted mail-in because I thought I was going to be sent somewhere in Pennsylvania and I wouldn't be near my precinct when the time came to vote. But they sent me to Pittsburgh, so I was able to work in the city. And so I went to my precinct. But I did a mail-in ballot, got the ballot, and I noticed that it didn't make any sense to me because the candidates that I was supposed to vote for were not on my ballot. So I went to North Park, which was one of their satellite offices, and went there. And they said, "Oh, well, this is happening. You're one of 29,000 people that got the wrong ballot. So we will let you vote here." So they gave me a new ballot, and I filled it out and voted. The next 2 or 3 days, I got a letter from the Department of the Bureau of Elections and said, "Well, you may have already voted, but we're sending you another ballot so that you can vote properly." And they sent me a ballot and they said, "If you had already voted, please vote again." And I still have the letter. And so I filled that ballot out and walked over to North Park on that Saturday and voted again. On Election Day, I'm working my precinct before I'm going out to work for the lawyers for Trump. And I'm watching all these people coming in and I'm watching these are a lot of people that said they wanted to vote. They got their mail-in ballots, but then they wanted to vote in person. So I was watching what was going on. And again, those people were given provisional ballots. So I know the judge of elections because I've been voting there for 20 some years. And I said to him, "Can I look at my name in the voting book?" And he said, "Sure." And we both looked. My name didn't appear. My wife's name didn't appear. And he said, "That's odd." He said, "You can't just erase people's names." I said, "But it's happened." So he said, "I'll let you vote provisionally." So I guess technically I voted 3 times in the presidential election in 2020. And to this day, I don't know which of the 3, if any, has been voted. Or, I'm sorry, has been counted. But it was just bizarre that I was given 3 opportunities in which to vote. And again, and now, and as the story goes, so after the election, I go back and I'm checking for the primary coming up in 2022. to see, geez, maybe my name doesn't appear in the books anymore. So I went on the county website and looked, found out that my name had been added again. However, my mailing address was a Florida address that I have never used in my life. Somebody just assigned me a Florida address. And
Wow.
I'm like, how did that happen? So there you go. So obviously somebody took me off the books and then put me back on, but they were scrolling down and somehow just transpired another address onto my address. And I've been getting.
Did you report that to the election
I didn't say
office?
anything because I'm afraid if I do that, they'll take me off the ballots. So it's kind of like I don't want to make.
Wow.
I know I'm voting. I was able to vote in the primary. It was on the books, but it's just getting to the point where what my experience has been is the same thing I am hearing from other people out there. There is no belief that anybody's vote counts anymore, and it's sad, but it's actually true. People are coming up to me and saying, "Why should I volunteer for an election, for a campaign? Why should I run for office? Why should I even go and vote on election day because my vote just doesn't count?" And again, we're not seeing anything in our leadership in the Republican Party to justify calming those fears of those people. And I would agree with those people, because how do we know? I mean, 1 minute I'm on the rolls, the next minute I'm not on the rolls. Next thing you know, I'm back on the rolls, but with a different address that doesn't belong to me. And so how do we know what's going on behind the scenes? And it was that experience, along with what our leadership had did right after the election, that caused me to take concern about what's happening in Allegheny County, especially with the Republican Party. And that's why I started getting involved in getting the idea to run for chairman of the Republican Committee of Allegheny County.
Doug, can you summarize just real briefly what you just mentioned the leadership has done since the election? What are some of those
Our
things?
leadership, right after the election, held a meeting with all committee chairs and vice chairs. And our chairman said, I want you to know that that there was no voter fraud in the 2020 election, that he personally investigated every voter fraud allegation, and he saw no voter fraud. And as a result, there was no voter fraud. Well, he didn't ask me. He didn't ask any of the lawyers for Trump that were out there getting the voter fraud information. But then he said something really disturbing, and that was, we as committee people and as chairs and vice chairs, it's our duty to go out and convince voters that no voter fraud had taken place. So that really struck a nerve with me, and it struck a nerve with a lot of chairs and vice chairs, because we were being asked to lie. And for what purpose, we don't know. But I mean, again, our chair immediately right after the election declared it to be finished in Pennsylvania. We all know that it dragged on and on and on. And for some bizarre reason, we were throwing in the towel immediately after the election. And to this day, now that we find that Audit the Vote and we just had the gubernatorial election with Doug Mastriana, who's out there pushing for an audit, we know that voter fraud had taken place. The Commonwealth Court determined that there was enough evidence to determine if there was voter fraud and should be taken up by the courts. So for Republican Party of Allegheny County, its leadership to say there was no voter fraud, that is being really, really terrible, representing the Republicans of Allegheny County.
So what is the consequences of not having enough ballot for the Republican? And what we also heard is there's not enough ballots on the Republican side, but there's no complaint on the Democrat side as to not enough ballot be in the polling station.
I can't speak for the Democrats. I'm sure their internal workings are concerned, because there was a lot of candidates that I'm sure they felt should have been elected. And if they didn't have enough ballots, and again, I don't know if they did, if they didn't, but if they didn't, they should all be concerned as well, because they're being suppressed in their opportunity to vote. So, I mean, this is an issue that's Republican, Democrat, and we just have to find out, what's going on. Now, the ramifications from it, nobody knows, because this has never happened before. They're going to certify the election as it sits, and they're just going to say move on.
So what's the action from your perspective? What would be a way to pursue a solution?
Well, unfortunately, I don't think there's a solution for this go around. It's for the next go around. First of all, we have to get a voice on the election bureau. to get in there and say, look, we need to have the proper number of ballots to be at least printed so that we can vote. And if we have leftover ballots, so be it. I mean, we spend money like crazy in government, and you think just printing up ballots would be a very easy cost to spend, because that's what we do in the United States. We vote. And now we're finding out we can't vote.
So tell us, what is the responsibility of a committee chair countywide?
Well, the chair is responsible for running the RCAC, the Republican Committee of Allegheny County. And quite frankly, it's basically running a business. RCAC has become a very large group. And we have, I think right now there's over 500 members, committee people in it that RCAC represents. So we're talking about a chair that is responsible for those 500 or plus or minus people. Unfortunately, for the past few years, we haven't really seen much coming from the RCAC. Yes, we've added committee people. The problem with the committee people is that was all done by a grassroots effort. Over the past year, we have been hitting it hard for school board races. Each precinct, each township with a school board, the local grassroots people decided they were going to take back their school boards. And so a lot of volunteers came out of the woodwork. They did, and everybody was energized. And as a result, we got a lot of people elected to school board that never would have thought about running for school board. And then that sort of dovetailed into we took the school board races and turned those people into committee people. And they were on the ballot, whether by election or by write-in. And now we're waiting for that to finish up as far as the write-in ballots being counted. But RCAC is a grassroots organization. And unfortunately, it has lost its way, so to speak. We hear about all the money that has been raised by RCAC. And yes, that is true. RCAC has raised more money last year and the year before than it had ever done before. The question is, where does that money go to? I mean, if we're talking $200,000 or $300,000 and they're not giving any money to the local candidates, which is what the target zone is for RCAC, where is the money going to? We have an office. We have 2 employees. Actually, we have 1 employee. We're going to be hiring another employee. And it takes money to run the office. It takes money to have employees. The only problem is, where else is the money going to? And transparency is always a big issue when you're dealing with government entities like this.
So has anybody seen the financial report?
It's there, and you can look at it, and you can see who's donated. Amazingly, a lot of PAC groups, a lot of big name donors have added their names to our RCAC donation list. But the question is, why would a big nationwide organization want to contribute money to little Allegheny County? Now, that being said, Allegheny County has the highest number of Republicans in the state. So we are the largest Republican voter base in Pennsylvania when it comes to Republicans. So, but the question is, what I keep hearing from the voters are that they just feel they're not part of it, because they hold the Lincoln Day dinner, which is once a year. The tickets are very expensive. Only corporations and political people can buy the tickets. And the guy that's out in the street knocking on the doors, he can't afford to go to a dinner. And so they're asking the question, why can't I go to an event that doesn't cost anything? Or why does it cost so much? There is a picnic in the summer, but we're talking about a very nice thing to go to. And again, I think the average voter is just being forgotten about.
So isn't that the job of the local committee men and women, is to engage the voter in their small precinct?
It is. And they've been doing a really great job for what they can do. But I'm speaking from experience, unless you have a contested school board race or a local race for supervisor or whatever they call their local township leaders, people just aren't going to get engaged. When Trump was running for president, a lot of people were engaged. We saw the numbers go up as far as people going to the polls when Trump was running. But on an off election, people tend not to get out. They don't want to go. And that's one of the difficult things that as chairman of the local committees, getting voter turnout. I mean, we go to community days, we do all these little things to engage with voters. There's people moving into the suburbs all the time. We try and get out there and meet these new people. But unfortunately, registering to vote is kind of one of the last things they think about. They don't think about who they're going to vote for until the day of the election. That's pretty much a common occurrence. Now, RCAC holds leadership meetings. And what I mean by that is not leadership, but training meetings to train if you're going to be a candidate, what you need to do. If you want to run a campaign, this is what you need to do. That's usually handled by the PAGOP, and they come out and talk. And those are good things to have. The problem is that you got to get the people engaged and get them.
So the number one issue will be election integrity.
Yes. We're not going to fix it overnight, but we need leadership to keep a vigil as to what's happening, whether it be on the north side when they're counting the votes. Now, I'm sure it will be said that, yeah, we had people there, we were watching, but you can't really see much from where they position you. It just seems like we're always going against the man. And again, that's not a great way to run an election. And I think even the Democrats are starting to question what's going on.
Tell us about the voting process for the chairmanship of the RCAC. Do you know what that process is?
Well, as far as we know, there are roughly about 500 people that can vote for the chair. They are committee people that were elected in this past primary. So if you were if you were a committee person, you were elected, you have the right to vote for who the chair of the RCAC is going to be. That vote has to take place 45 days after the election is certified. So we're waiting for the official certification to come in, which they claim is going to be either yesterday or today. And once that happens, we have to get, as candidates, petitions, and we get those petitions signed by at least 50 people. And if we have 50 people on that, good signatures, then we'll be entitled to go on the ballot. And then whatever day is given as the day of election, they'll hold a reorganization meeting. And at that meeting, they will vote for chair, vice chair, I believe the treasurer. And at that point, the new leadership will take over and we'll go from there. But it's a very strange election because people are going to be hearing about Doug Austin and they're not going to be able to vote, even though they're great Republicans, mainly because they're not committee people.
Can you tell the committee people that what is your pledge to them and why should they vote for you?
My pledge is definitely to be working with them. The big complaint that I have heard from chairs is that there's no meetings. There's no correlation between the chair office and the local chairs. There's been no communication. Anything that each individual committee needs, they go to RCAC and talk to the executive director. But and some of the people that I know that have talked to our chair that have questions have met with animosity and anger instead of getting an answer to their questions. I mean, we're all volunteers, and you can't treat volunteers like they're nobody. I mean, you can't be yelling at them. You can't be angry with them. We're all in this together. We all have questions, and we should be out there helping one another. We shouldn't be divisive. We shouldn't be putting people in categories. I mean, we're not going to get anywhere if we're not working in a unified group.
Do you feel there's a kind of battle between sort of an establishment, old mindset Republican and a more conservative? Because I've been reading about that on the Democrat side, where there's sort of a battle between the establishment Democrat leadership and the up-and-coming progressives.
Most definitely. We saw that in the Senate race that just happened and in the gubernatorial race. We've had friends fighting each other. We've had people that are leadership from Harrisburg coming in and putting their candidates out there. We've had grassroots efforts with their candidates. I've seen that people are picking sides. For example, once again, our chair sided with McCormick as a candidate, and he also came out and stated that after the election that Doug Mastriano is an unelectable candidate. Well, we've got to be, we're the cheerleaders. We got to go out there and make sure our candidates win. We can't be sitting there on the sidelines saying, he's not electable. Forget about him. Let's move on to the next election. Well, that will mean that Shapiro will become our governor and probably be governor for 8 years. So we can't just give up. Or as a chairman, you should be neutral in your races because everybody deserves the right to run. Now, to answer your question further, yes, there is a division between the establishment, the local grassroots people, and it doesn't seem like that there's a connection between the two. That chasm just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And in the end, we're giving candidates selected by somebody and told you've got to support that person and go with it. And that's what's been happening. And there's no groundswell of excitement as a result. And now we have Doug Mastriano, there's a groundswell toward him. And again, I went to a meeting last night and there were some people saying, well, he can't win. I'm not going to vote for him. Well, what's our alternative? We have Governor Shapiro then to look forward to.
I guess I don't understand that sentiment. I mean, I could see saying I'm not going to vote for someone because I don't agree with their policies, but to say I don't think they can win, so I'm just not going to vote for them. That's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point.
It is. And I think one of the things, the difference between Republicans and Democrats, Republicans are principled. So if we believe in a certain cause and you're against that cause, there's nothing that's going to happen that we're going to change my vote for you. Whereas in the Democrat side, okay, you're a Democrat first, we'll elect you. I may not agree with you, but we'll elect you to get you in there, and then we'll work on you to change your ideas. And it's a crazy way of thinking about it, but in a way, the Democrats get more people elected because they're putting in different people with different ideas. Whereas in our situation, our voters, being as principled as they are, go into the voting booth thinking, well, this person is not pro-gun. They're pro-choice instead of pro-life, and as a result, they scratch them off the list. And as a result, we don't get those kind of candidates. We look at Tom Ridge. Tom Ridge was pro-choice, but we all got around him and we made him our governor.
Do you think that's why on the higher profile elections in this primary, the Republicans seem to be tightly contested and the Democrat elections seem to be landslides?
I think that's one of the reasons, yes. It's probably the reason. We just had too many people running and we weren't able to sort them out prior to the election. And again, if I'm a Republican and I feel like I have the right to run for U.S. Senate and I can get the signatures on my petitions, then I have every right to be on that ballot. So, and then if I can't get enough votes, then I drop off and away I go. But we shouldn't be battling each other, beating each other up with all the mudslinging that was going on. I mean, we're just hurting ourselves.
Well, one of the things you said about Mastriano is not electable is interesting. On the Senate race, the two people were fighting out each other, and now Dr. Oz won. Some of the Republican voters would say, well, Dr. Oz is not even from Pennsylvania. And I see now Fetterman has print out a promotional label and say, Dr. Oz for New Jersey. So what you're saying is the Republican voters should just rally behind Dr. Oz and vote for this candidate and forget about it.
Just to make it clear, to take a step back, I did not say that Mastriano was unelectable. That was our chairman, Sam DeMarco.
Oh.
Just so that there's not a soundbite against me later on. I believe he is electable, and we're going to be working with him to make sure that he does get elected. And to answer your question, yes, Dr. Oz may not be from Pennsylvania. We had a right to challenge that in the primary, and unfortunately, that didn't become an issue to the point where he was not elected, that he was able to get elected. So that gives great fodder for the Democrats to say, yes, he's not from here. But again, he's our candidate, and he is electable, and I believe that he will make a great senator, and we all have to get behind it.
So your sentiment, and if you become elected as the chairman of the RCAC, you will unite the base, grassroots, and to rally behind the Republican candidates. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct. I'm going to work very hard to unite everybody because divided we fall, and we are divided right now. And we need to have somebody that is in there as chair to be a true leader and that people can count on. And I think with my background, I think I bring a lot to the table.
Okay. And we will, just to be transparent, we also extend the invitation to the current chairman, Sam DeMarco, to come on the show to do an interview. I just want to make sure you know that.
Yes.
Well, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I just want to encourage all of these committee people to get out and vote. I know it's going to be a difficult thing to do for the simple reason it's going to take place in July and everybody's going to be on vacation. So that makes it like a very difficult election to go through. So we'll have to work on that. But again, I think that because of my background being a businessman and an attorney with 30 years plus experience, that I bring a lot to the table. And that it's interesting because as attorneys in law school, we're taught to think differently than other people. We have to look at issues from both sides. Because if you're in a courtroom and your other side throws something at you, you had to have been able to anticipate what they were going to do. And so lawyers are taught to think that way, which makes it a great mindset to be in a leadership position, especially in a political world, because you're always anticipating what's going to happen. And I bring that to the table. I bring I know what it's like to have employees. I mean, I had well over 200 plus employees. Our business had $100 million sales plus, and I'm used to running businesses. And I think RCAC needs to rebrand itself because we don't know what it is right now. And we need to come in, take a look at it. We need to do an audit of everything that it's done so that we can get it back on track, run it like a business, make sure that all of our contracts are in writing and that we actually get things done so that we can move forward, because we have a very big election coming up in 2024, and not forgetting about the big election in November, because we've got a lot of congressmen that we have to elect along with governor and U.S. Senate.
Can people mail in their vote? Let's just say it happens in July. A lot of people go on vacation. Can they mail in that vote, or do they have to be present?
We go by the RCAC bylaws, and that means that they can have a proxy vote if they can't make it, or they have to be present. Right now, there's no mail-in.
Okay, so they can send somebody in their place to make the vote.
They have a proxy. They have to give to another committee person to allow that committee person to vote for them.
Okay. And how can people reach out to you if they have any questions for you or just want to have a conversation?
My telephone number is 412-650-0024. Let me make sure that's right. I'm going to put my glasses on here. I'm sorry, 0021. 412-650-0021. The website is going to be votedougaustin.com. And the email address will be doug@votedougaustin.com.
Okay.
Very good.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Sherry and Bob. I appreciate it.
It's been
great.
A pleasure,
Have a great rest of the week and great summer.